Part 75. The car ride to Zephyr's is mostly quiet. Averia's day has been turned upside down, and she has a lot of paperwork to deal with before they even get to Moonstone Mountain. Her heart aches for Mitchell, but a selfish part of her can't believe Kathleen revealed herself on one of the only days Avery isn't on Packlands. He'll be okay. All they, don't worry, Roman mutters, glancing up from his own laptop to take a look at Avery. Her face is screwed up in a mixture of stress and disgust, and he gets out of his seat. Do you want to talk right now, or do you want some silence? He asks softly, and Avery sighs. I want a hug, she mutters, and he engulfs her in his arms, patting her back lightly. Is there anything that I can do? And she shrugs. I don't think so. Filling in these approval forms is literally killing me. She mumbles, pushing her hair back. Okay, then I'll do it, he suggests, gently prying the forms and the necessary file away from her. I need to do it. In the alpha. She sighs, putting her hand out. Nobody will ever know. You rest your eyes for a few minutes. I don't want you to be upset when we get to Zephyr's, he whispers, kissing her temple before he returns to his seat. She stares at him unsurely, biting her lip nervously. Are you sure? I know you have your own work to do, she reminds him, furrowing her brows. My work isn't necessary to do today. I took the full day off to spend with you. The fact I'm getting the business I need to deal with Zephyr out of the way today is a bonus, he promises. Now put your head back and relax. His tone is stern, and she decides it's easier to listen to him. He cares for us. Sonia whimpers. I'd just being stupid if he thinks I won't be upset when we get to Zephyr's. She grumbles, and Sonia immediately scolds her. He wants to take some of the weight off your shoulders, and this is how he knows how to. Let him in, she growls, and Avery is slightly taken aback by her wolf. Sonia rarely argues against her, but she seems set on this. Avery uneasily decides to listen, scratching at her neck anxiously. She never feels like something is done right unless she does it herself, which is something she's working on. Well, this is the perfect test case. Sonia snorts, irked by her human's need to do everything herself. Avery lets her eyes close slowly, getting comfortable in her seat as she shoots nervous glances in Roman's direction. He cracks his neck as she cringes at the sound, shaking her head like a dog with water in its ears does. Her phone rings and she sighs, answering it after reading the name. Hayes F. We're on the way, she mutters, and her friend laughs on the other end. I'm assuming you're e-driving, because you wouldn't have answered if you were running. And Avery rolls her eyes. Yeah, a lot of shit happened this morning. We'll fill you in when we get there, she quickly explains, and she can hear her friend laugh to himself. Roman is with you, he asks teasingly, and Avery releases an irritated grunt. Yes, he is. Would you like to say hello? She questions sarcastically, and Zephyr agrees excitedly. She is a golden retriever as a best friend. Ro, say hi to Zeph. She sighs, thrusting the phone in Roman's direction. Hey Zeph, I'm looking forward to seeing you. Man, he grins, trying not to laugh at Averia's facial expression. She looks so miserable that he actually feels bad at the fact his laugh almost slipped out. He gently eases the phone out of her hand and clears his throat before speaking. She watches him with curious eyes, furrowing her brow as he begins to speak. Okay, I'm going to hang up for you guys. Ivory needs to sleep for a little bit, and we should be there in about an hour. We're just under halfway there, he explains, his eyes never leaving Avery S. That's perfect. I'll make sure that snacks are ready for your arrival. I know that the two of you like to nibble. Zephyr laughs, letting Roman hang up after they say their goodbyes. Get some sleep. Although, you're not gonna miss anything, Roman promises, raising his hands in earnest. To my aching extraordinaire, Madeline Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. In trusting you here, she finally says, curling up into a ball. He reaches over and drapes his jacket over her body, causing her to give him a little smile as she gets settled. Ivory slowly drifts off to sleep, and Roman watches her for a few minutes, a prominent frown on his face. She looks so peaceful. Booker coos. The wolf is absolutely obsessed with his mate, reminding Roman of her existence every 5 or 10 minutes. He's entirely enamored with her, and he praises her constantly to Roman. Roman finds it slightly cute, but also extremely annoying, because he focuses on the strangest things about her. He never noticed that when she was upset or nervous that she tapped with her fingers, or when she was happy that she would try to purse her lips before they gave way to the biggest smile he has ever seen. Booker notices everything, and he had never realized how observant his olfactory was until it came to his mate. He was desperate to mark her, but Roman was firm and clear about staying away from her neck until she was ready. He was doing his best to support her and be the best mate he could be, but it was a little hard because they hadn't told anyone they were actually mates well. Zephyr knew, and Jock knew because he was in the meeting. But apart from them, nobody has been told. Both of them had decided that it would just complicate things, and it would lead to everyone trying to force them to move in with each other and solidify their bond. They were both busy, and they both respected each other. Roman would never try to make Avery give up her title to be his Luna, because he knew how hard she had worked to take back her title. In the same way, Avery would never dream of asking him to give up his title to be demoted to her male. The crossroads that they had been stuck at for 2 months was complicated. Avery wasn't sure what to do, but she had been open about that, which made it a lot easier for him to try and find solutions. His best option was to try and work out some territory deals so that they could have a pathway between their packs. But it would still be a lot of work, even if he cashed in all of the favors he was owed. He releases a stressed sigh, running a hand through his hair as he returns to work on the file he had confiscated from Avery. He reads over what she had written, and he looks to the line for the reason of dissolution of the mating bond. He clenches his jaw, picks up his pen, and slowly writes the word infidelity. Infidelity was on the wearer side, especially with mate bonds. If someone cheated on you, and you were marked and mated fully, your wolf would feel every single movement. That's why it was weird to him that Mitch didn't know. Everyone knew what happened to wolves who were cheated on. Everyone was taught the signs in school, because it was deemed to be extremely dangerous. It doesn't sit right to him that Kathleen was able to cheat on Mitchell and sleep with even one other guy. The man surely would have felt it. Maybe she was working with a witch, Booker suggests, and Roman cringes at the suggestion. I don't want to have to deal with another species in this decade. The vampires are enough. Do you think they could have done something to Kathleen or Mitchell to cause this? Roman asks thoughtfully, tapping his pen against his arm. Yeah, the vampires are a handful, all right. Booker muses. It could have been them. I suppose they could have enchanted her. We should get a witch in to check then. Roman grumbles, typing a note reminder out on his phone. He glances over at Avery, nearly having a heart attack when he realizes her eyes are open and fully black. Ove, go back to sleep. We're almost there. And she shakes her head. I want to run. With you, she insists, folding his jacket and undoing her seatbelt. We're going to run the rest of the way. Well, meet you there, she announces, and he blinks at her in confusion, whips with the sudden urge to run. And she grins. Sonia wants to see Booker. She beams, flinging open the sliding door while the car is still moving. Just Christ. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Yanking her back into the vehicle, the driver slams on the brakes, causing them both to fly forward. I was gonna roll down the hill, she protests, and he glares at her. You would have been killed. Releasing her and running both of his hands through his hair. I'm a werewolf, she responds, raising her eyebrows. Yeah, not indestructible, Dumbass. His heart still racing. Sonia wanted to get outside as fast as she could. Avery shrugs, grabbing the bag for her clothes as she exits the vehicle properly. Thank you. Roman nods to the driver, following her out and flinging his hands in the air. If you had been killed, I would have dragged you back to life and then murdered you myself. Speeding up to walk past her, he sends Effa a text to tell him they're going to run the rest of the way to his territory. And, as he sends it, Avery clears her throat behind him. He pockets his phone and turns around, his eyebrows rising and his jaw dropping slightly as his eyes land on a very naked Avery. She grins, and then immediately shifts, nudging the bag of her clothes on the forest floor with his nose. He stoops down to pick up the bag, and she shakes her head, a wolfish grin on her face. He puts the bag down and unbuttons his shirt, folding it and fitting it into the bag. He slowly strips off, Ivory sitting in front of him with her legs crossed, her ears perked up to listen for any invaders. Once he finishes packing the bag, he bends down over her, securely fastening their clothes to her back. She stands up and waits for him to shift, Sonia impatiently waiting for him to change into Booker so that they can run together. His bones crack and shift into place, and Sonia forces Avery to the back of her mind. Avery allows it to happen, excited for her wolf to spend some time with her mate. As soon as Roman is ready to run, Sonia takes off at full speed in the direction of Effa's pack. Her legs a blur as she zooms through the forest, jumping over fallen tree trunks and dodging rocks. Booker is surprised by the female's sudden urge for competition, but he immediately runs after her. She is fast, but so is he, and he catches up to her with little bother. The two of them notice each other at the same time, and Sonia stops in her tracks, causing Booker to do the same. Sonia pads over to him, tentatively licking his face. He doesn't shake her off or snap at her, so she continues, licking all around his ears too. He lowers himself to the ground so that HES resting on the ground, letting his female markers as hers. Once she seems satisfied by her work, she sits back proudly, her tail wagging like a puppy. She only gets a minute of sitting time, because Booker tackles her to the ground, licking her neck and face with just as much enthusiasm she had. Their humans don't want them to mark each other, and they don't have time right now, so they avoid the particular spot on the neck meant for the mark. Once Booker is done, he helps Sonia get to her feet, and the two of them sprint towards Zephyr's land again, howling and chasing squirrels and rabbits the whole way there. They skid to a stop just before Zephyr's land begins, and Roman shifts into his human form first. He unclips the bag from Avery's back and takes his clothes out, leaving her stuff in the bag, and then retreating behind a nearby tree. Ivory takes her time shifting back, hopping into her clothes as soon as she's back in human form. It's warm outside of the trees, but it's freezing cold in the shade. Are you finished? To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And she grins to herself, slipping her high heels onto her feet and then clearing her throat. Yet, let's go, she responds, picking the clothes bag up off the floor and folding it into her handbag. Do you think he'll meet us at the border? He asks curiously, and she shrugs. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. The guards will probably be there anyway. She sighs, and they both wince as they enter the new territory, a various body shuddering with the intake of the variety of scents. Nobody greets them at the border, and that causes Avery to raise her eyebrows as they walk further into the territory. The pack house comes into sight soon enough. The area seems strangely empty, and Avery glances over her shoulder, feeling watched. Where's everyone? Roman mutters in confusion. It is the middle of the morning, the kids are probably in school. The adults in work. She tries to convince herself, sliding her hand into Roman's. The door of the pack house flies open, and Effa lands a few feet away from them. Avery immediately runs to his side, while Roman's eyes flash and try to figure out where the threat to their mate's safety came from. Are you okay? Avery hisses, hauling her friend to his feet. Zephyr looks irritated, but unhurt as he dusts himself off. My father, he grits out, storming into the house, cussing Roman. Roman and Avery exchange looks, and quickly follow him in. They've both heard enough stories about the elder Addison to know that Zephyr shouldn't really handle him on his own, especially if the older man is angry. Ivory is concerned for her friend, but also for her godson, though soon as they enter the house, her ears perk up, listening for any sort of baby noise. They notice the man straight away, a chest much shorter than his son, but his arms are wider than Avery's legs. Hello, Alpha Addison. Roman greets formally, and Avery gives him a close, lipped smile as she glares daggers at him before he turns around. What seems to be the fuss here today? Roman asks with a smile, and Avery clenches her jaw as the anger in the room raises. My son is being an idiot, and so is that bastard grandchild of mine. The older man hisses, and Avery growls at him in warning. The man blinks at the ferocious and aggressive sound that left her lips, and in that time, Zephyr has him slammed against a wall with handcuffs on. "I'm putting you into the cells again," he announces, passing him to four guards who Avery didn't notice until they stepped forward. "Where is my lovely little godson?" Avery asks, unable to hold her excitement in for much longer. Zephyr points to the ceiling, and Avery wastes no time in sprinting up the stairs, taking them two at a time. She scuttles into the room she knows that Emmett sleeps in, and bounces up to the bars of his crib. The baby blinks at her, and she scoops him up carefully, holding him away from her as she examines him. "You've gotten even bigger," she mutters to herself in disbelief, resting him on her hip securely. She walks down the stairs with him in her arms, grinning at Zephyr and Roman. "He woke up early this morning. I think he knew that you were coming," Zephyr mutters, rubbing his jaw. "Are you okay?" Roman asks him, and Zephyr shrugs. "Yeah, I'm annoyed, but I'm all right." He grunts, leading them into the kitchen. He takes a bag of frozen peas out of the freezer unit, resting it against his face as he watches Avery coo at Emmett. "Look at the baby," she hisses to Roman, her grin covering most of her face as she looks down at the little boy. "She's lovely," Roman comments awkwardly, his eyes widening as Avery thrusts him into his arms. "Ave, I haven't held a baby properly since Michelle," he warns her, and Avery shrugs. "It'll be good practice," she comments, and his eyes widen. "Good practice for when Bronwyn comes to visit," she adds quickly, realising what she said. Zephyr watches the pair of them with a smile on his face. "Your driver just arrived. I'm having some of the maids bring in your briefcases." He nods, and Avery grins at him. "How is my favorite mountain alpha?" Sliding into the seat beside him, and leaving Roman in the middle of the floor with a squirming baby. The baby starts crying, and Roman immediately passes him off to Avery. The look of fear on his face is enough to make her giggle quietly, resting Emmett over her shoulder and gently rubbing his back. "She's so good with babies," Booker says dreamily, and Roman can practically feel him swooning. "I hate half of my pack," Zephyr groans, "and the other half hate me." Avery raises an eyebrow, releasing a sigh. "I'm sure they don't hate you," she protests, and he stares at her blankly. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. They tried to throw me out of my own pack," he grumbles, and Avery nods awkwardly. "Yes, they did. I remember that." She blinks, gently removing one of her curls from Emmett's claws. "We're working on dialogue, which is why I asked Roman to come as soon as he could." Putting his bag of peas back into the freezer, "Do either of you want your coffee before we head into my office?" Glancing over his shoulder at the two who are sharing the baby between them. "Coffee for me." Avery nods, and Roman shakes his head. "He'll grab a bottle of water on my way in." Making faces at the baby, Emmett giggles, trying to grab at Roman with his chubby little hands. Ivory watches the two interact, laughing as she lifts Semmet towards Roman to help him grab his nose, which seems to be the objective end it has interest on Roman's poor face. The child bops him right in the middle of his face, giggling more when Roman looks utterly shocked. Zephyr watches the three of them with a smile, shaking his head. I knew I made the right choice, he comments, and Avery looks at him in confusion. What do you mean? And he grins at her. If anything ever happened to me, I'd be going to you. Obviously, I knew you'd be good at working with him and raising him if you needed to. But seeing you three together, it's just really lovely, he explains, walking over and gently taking his son from the two of them. He rocks the little boy back and forward, and the little boy goes completely silent, his eyes wide and locked on his father's. I'm going to get to Issa to put him to bed for his nap, and then we can have our meeting, he murmurs, glancing up to the couple, who nod. Take your time, Avery whispers, watching the duo as they move around the kitchen. Roman grins as the baby looks his way, waving at the kid until H.E.S. out of sight. H.E.S. the most gorgeous little boy I've ever seen. Ivory sighs, leaning back in her chair. He really got the best mixture of his parents' looks. Roman agrees, sitting beside her and lifting her legs onto his. You okay? And she nods, looking at him curiously. Why, is something wrong? And he shakes his head quickly. No, I just wanted to check in, he explains. Do you want to go find our briefcases and files? Avery nods reluctantly, letting him haul her to her feet. They join hands and Avery leads him to where she knows the cars usually are parked. She guesses right, because as they walk into the garage, they spot two maids climbing into the SUV. Avery hurries over, and Roman can't figure out what she says, but the two maids nod, smile, and retreat, letting Avery climb in herself. When Roman finally gets over to the vehicle, Avery is sitting on the floor, closing files, bagging papers, and collecting all of the pens and pencils that got thrown onto the floor whenever the car had gone over a bump or a dip in the roads. I almost finished the papers for Mitch, he informs her, reaching over her to grab them and his laptop from where he was sitting. Perfect, Avery sighs, shaking her head sadly, taking the file off him and shoving it into her briefcase. It takes them a few minutes to pack everything up, because they had been fully situated for at least 2 hours of working until Avery had decided they should run halfway. Zephyr pops his head into the garage, laughing softly when he spots Avery on the floor and Roman on his laptop. We have an office you can work in, you know. Raising an eyebrow, Avery grins at him, and Roman smirks, closing his laptop and getting up. You're ESO? So funny, Roman comments sarcastically, nudging Zephyr with his elbow as he swans by him and into the house again. Emmett is asleep now, so we just need to pray that he doesn't wake up. Zephyr nods, and Avery raises a brow. Have you been having trouble getting him to sleep and stay asleep? She asks as they walk, and Zephyr grimaces and then nods. The doctor said it's probably because he misses his mother. I think HES just overtied him most of the time. And Avery frowns. I'll get my healer to send you over something for that. She nods, and Zephyr shrugs. That disgusting depression paste she sent did work. So that works for me, he mutters, wrinkling his nose up at recollection of the taste of the potion that was prescribed for him last time. My healer is a miracle worker. Avery shrugs, taking one of the seats in front of the desk. Zephyr takes his behind the desk, and Roman sits beside Avery after he closes the door as gently as possible. Avery sips her coffee, looking around the office. I like the redecoration. Very autumnal, she comments, and he grins proudly. I thought the colors went well together. He beams, opening his laptop as the other pair organize themselves. I've emailed you the list of rogue sightings, and I have the database loading right now, she announces. Zephyr nods, and Roman stares at them, mostly clueless about the part of the conversation. Have there been any sightings of the rogues Lilith to run with? Zephyr asks, raising an eyebrow as he looks up from his keyboard. Nope. Avery sighs. And Roman winces. I checked with the few rogues I have in my cells, and none of them know anything. He adds to the conversation, and trust me, we made sure. I want to find out who she was talking about. If she was even telling the truth. Zephyr mutters, roughly dragging his fingers through his perfectly coiffed hair. Something tells me that she was. Ivory says hesitantly, looking up from her screen worry. What do you mean? Zephyr asks. And Avery pauses. She thinks over what Shess about to say because she knows how they're going to react already. Call it intuition. Or whatever you want. I saw so much fear in her eyes that even I felt a little scared. She mutters, looking back at her laptop. Both of the men exchange a confused glance. And Roman speaks first. How did you know it was fear? He asks gently. I could smell it. She reek of it. Sonia Cowell didn't even feel her wolf. She had gone into a sort of hibernation as a defense mechanism. She sighs, shaking her head glumly. I wonder what caused that. Zephyr muses, and Avery raises an eyebrow. That's what I want to know, she points out, rolling her eyes a little. Okay, the database is up. Send me anything you have, she instructs, and Zephyr cracks his neck, ill patching the other committee members, stabbing a button on the phone on the desk, and then typing in 6 numbers. They all wait in silence, Roman gazing around the room. He feels like a child being dragged around by his mother, but he doesn't really mind. He loves spending time with her, and he'll do that anywhere. He slyly interlaces their fingers, bringing her hand up to his mouth to kiss the back of it gently while Zephyr is busy. She gives him a small smile, her cheeks going a little red as she looks back down. Okay, can you all hear me? Zephyr asks loudly, making Avery flinch at the sudden noise. Yes, Kotya Amaro here. Kotya booms back, causing even Roman to wince at the sudden volume. Petty, Scott says shortly, and Avery has to hold back a laugh. He has enough to do with his own pack right now, and he made it clear that he didn't want to be dragged into any unnecessary calls right now. The 4 other alphas announce themselves, and Avery scowls as the final one introduces himself. Carlton, he smoothly states, his voice making Avery prickle. Lewis's mate was the beta of the Carlton pack, but that didn't make the alpha any more tolerable. He was rather rude to Avery any time she rang on pack business. She disapproved of their stereotypical roles for women, and she didn't know how Louisa managed there, especially when she was at her most outrageous. Carlton firmly believed women should be seen, out heard, and Avery was the exact opposite of that. Still, she put up with him out of respect for Louisa. He was a permanent member of the panel, merely covering for one of his allies while that alpha was on paternity leave. Okay, we've compiled a list of rogue sightings and captures, and we're currently running them through the database. Avery pipes up, keeping her voice strong and unwavering. Why do we have to be on a phone call to do this? Scott asks, his voice heavy with exhaustion. One of the filings set off an alert in the system, since it's the 9 of us that have access to the database. We need to figure out who set up the alert. Avery sighs, and Scott makes a noise of consent. I've had very little road trouble since the attempt on my life. Kotya announces, everyone around my pack is avoiding my boundaries, and it seems that they're avoiding the surrounding packs too. Avery exchanges a look with Zephyr, biting her lip. Okay, Kotya, you might want to have extra border guards installed. Zephyr proposes, and Avery nods. This could be in the build, up to another attack. Avery adds as an explanation, and Kotya sighs. I think you could be right. I sent it to vampires the other morning on my run, but the trails were cold by the time I realized. She details. Ivory types everything she says, nodding along. Okay. Has anyone else had any encounters with vampires? Zephyr asks, sounding like a Heditcher. We have a coven nearby, but none of them have gone near our pack lands in the past few months. Alpha Kai notes, and Avery can picture the small, Elf, like man frowning as he speaks. I'm in the same situation. Kai Avery replies immediately. Any trade we have with them has shifted to the outside of my pack lines. But I trust that coven. Do you trust the neighboring one to you? Kai sighs. And everyone flinches due to the static created on the line. For all the money the council have. You think they defund better phone lines? Roman mutters to Avery. And Courtney bursts out laughing. The phone picked up his little sentence. And Roman cringes back into his seat. Hello. Elful Ancaster. Elfuk, I hollers. And Roman smiles slightly. He mentored the younger man. And he has a soft spot for him. Hello. Kai, he greets back. I'm sorry for intruding on your meeting. I have business with Alpha Addison. A very computer starts to beep. And all three of them stare at it as she slowly clicks into the alert. What is it? Alpha Carlton asks, sounding irritated at the fact he has to be present. Scott, you're gonna want to take a seat. Zephyr says unsurely, and Scott grunts. Sitting. Now what is it? And Avery bites her lip. There have been some sightings of Collie. She utters softly, the sound of violence wearing rings down the line, echoing over and over again. Roman has to clap a hand over his mouth to stop himself from giggling because he finds the entire situation hilarious, that is, until the gravity of the situation actually sinks in and he realizes what the implications are. For Maluna Collie Petty, Carlton asks, and Avery looks his effort to answer him. Yes, Zephyr simply responds. She's been sighted in the south. And around A territory. Avery groans aloud and rubs her temples, watching as the computer retrieves exact coordinates from the cameras and GPS trackers she has installed all over her region. Scott asks through gritted teeth. As recently as a week ago. She responds quickly, and she hears a growl. Scott slams down the phone, and he leaves the call. The echoing of the dial tone fills the silence between everyone still on the line. Plot 76. Can you imagine if we had a baby? Roman asks dreamily, speaking more to himself than Howie. To my audiobook extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing Kushut's enthusiasm. It would be us having the baby. Sonia argues irritably. Sonia doesn't like your phrasing. Ivory comments lazily, glancing over at him with a hand shading her eyes. Can you imagine a child we created? He rephrases with a grin. His whole body turned sideways and facing her. His tan is going to be so uneven. Sonia comment. It would be so dominant it would be ridiculous. Avery responds. And Roman releases a puff of air. His grin has turned to a bit of a frown. And Avery quickly sits up on her chair, furrowing her brows. I'm not saying I don't want a kid, she explains hurriedly. I just tend to think on the negative end of things. You know that. I still think a child is a good thing, so I don't appreciate you trashing our metaphorical demon spawn. He retorts, his tone half teasing and half hurt. Oh, we fucked up. Sonia groans. You haven't even marked me yet. Why are we talking about kids? Raising an eyebrow. She's a little annoyed that he hasn't even tried to mark her yet. She knows that they have to sort out a lot of business stuff first. But they could do that after the marking anyway, and that way they would have something to show for it. Mark her hand. Please. Mitchell grumbles from his sun lounger, not even looking over at the couple. Archias flattened out on the stripy sunbed, a hat draped over his eyes and a cocktail in his hand. Archias, taking a day off, and 8 sheets making the most of it in the sun. His ideal afternoon wouldn't usually be one spent with his alpha and her mate, but he doesn't have much of a choice. All of his friends are Kathleen's friends as well, and he still can't get over the shock of the betrayal. He hasn't seen Kathleen in a week, and he got her to sign the dissolution of the mating papers 3 days previous. Since she signed them, he had essentially been on a considerable party buzz, drinking so heavily that even HES intoxicated. He was a big man, and he had a high endurance, so that said a lot. He invited Avery and Roman to go with him that night. They had politely refused. citing the need to keep their livers, and he had started to drink already. A little strawberry alcoholic slush, i.e. with a cute green mini umbrella being held in his gigantic paw. Why has she been giving out? Roman asks Mitchell, grinning. A very cheeks go a little red, and she sweeps up her towel, wrapping it around her bikini-clad body. She hasn't shut up complaining about hey, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Mitchell yelps as his alpha pours a bottle of water ahead. Enjoy your tanning. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Slapping his forehead as she walks away to the lake house. Roman grins and hurries after her, patting Mitch on the shoulder as he goes. Ave, wait for me, he hollers after her, increasing his pace. As soon as he catches up to her, he slings an arm around her shoulder. She shrugs it off, and he frowns. What's wrong with you? Furrowing his brows. It's embarrassing. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Throwing open the door and shivering slightly as she enters the well-air-conditioned house. What is? He asks in confusion, furrowing his brows. You laughing about me not being marked? She scowls, and he raises his eyebrows. What are you talking about? I'm not laughing, he responds, opening the bedroom door for her. You laughed. With Mitchell. She spits, throwing her towel into the washing basket. No, I didn't. Extremely confused. It's embarrassing for me. You haven't marked me, and everyone is wondering why. Am I not good enough? She growls, her eyes flashing as she yanks on an oversized hoodie and some shorts. Roman's eyes widen as he realizes what he walked himself into, and he immediately shakes his head frantically. No, oh my goddess. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, he explains as quickly as he can, trying to grab her hands to stop her from moving around the room and cleaning like she usually does when she gets upset. Then why won't you just mark me? She roars, her canines descending as she turns to face him. Okay. Ove, I need you to breathe. He tries to soothe her, his eyes widening as she approaches him. I didn't want to rush you. He manages to get out as he backs into the wall, his hands in the air as he tries to show her that he means no harm to her or Sonia. Mark her, Booker encourages, drooling at the sudden dominance and demanding nature that's taken over his usually relatively placid and polite mate. Ivory seems slightly taken aback when Roman says these words, and her canines slowly return to their normal size. Once they go, and her eyes start flashing, she claps a hand over her mouth, her eyes widening drastically as she realizes what just happened. Oh my goddess. I am so sorry, she gasps, running a hand through her hair. Roman shakes his head, wrapping his arms around her gently, pulling her towards him as he takes a seat on the edge of the bed. Sonia just lost it, and I couldn't stop her. Ivory apologizes profusely, her brows furrowed and her eyes watering. Is that how you really feel? He asks softly, and she bites her lip. Yes, she softly responds, closing her eyes. I want you to mark me. I don't understand why you won't, she adds, her bottom lip pouting out a little bit. His face softens, and he cups her face gently. I didn't want to put any pressure on you. You know that everyone expects marked couples to mate almost immediately afterwards, he whispers, pressing a gentle kiss to her nose. When have we ever done anything anyone expected of us? She giggles, her eyes sparkling as she looks at him. I wanted to do everything at your pace, he elaborates. I want you to mark me, she instructs, holding his face in her hands as his hands settle on her waist. What? Like? Now he asks, his eyebrows shooting up towards his hairline. No, that would be really structured and planned. She laughs. Whenever you're ready. We need a cute story to tell our kids. She said our kids? Booker roars, She wants to have children with us. Roman grins at both his wolf's excitement and at Avery. His heart melts just looking at her, and he draws her in for a gentle kiss. Do you want to go and get some food? Holding one of her hands and playing with the ring she wears. You'd like that? She smiles, standing up from his lap where she had perched. In the mood for a really nice sandwich. He frowns, tapping his chin as he thinks. We could go to the place near the town. She offers, and he nods with a smile. Let me just change. He grins, kissing her cheek lightly before he wanders over to his suitcase. They're spending the weekend at Avery's lake house, because they both thought they might burst into tears if they had to look at another file. Roman pulls out a Hawaiian print shirt, and Avery groans. What? I think this is really stylish. He defends, and Avery stares at him in horror. Oh honey, no, she laughs, standing up from the bed and looking over his shoulder. You pack like a dad, she remarks in disgust. Why did you need to bring 8 pairs of trousers for today's? Well, I don't hear me making fun of you for overpacking, he says weakly, and Avery raises an eyebrow. I brought extra underwear in case something happened. She defends. Baby, the way you packed it. It seems like you're expecting to have accidents every day. He snorts, shaking his head at her as he slips on the shirt. Look, you don't have to deal with periods. She grumbles, scowling at him. He raises his hands in the air in protest of his innocence. No, I know that. Thank goddess I don't. But that can't be your defense for all your overpacking. He grins, sliding off his swimming trunks after facing away from her. He hops into a pair of boxer briefs and then buttons up a pair of khaki shorts, making Avery gape at him. To wear agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nobel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He groans, and she starts cackling to herself. You dress like an overgrown fat boy. She laughs, and he pouts at her. Don't be so rude, he complains, grabbing her hand and twirling her. He slides his feet into a pair of trainers, as does she. We're matching. She beams, nodding to their feet. He looks down and releases a laugh as he realizes that she is. Right. Are we one of those couples now? Rolling his eyes playfully, she laces her fingers through his and pockets her phone and keys, grinning back at him as she leads him out the door. We can walk over, and then run back if that sounds all right to you. She proposes, and he considers it for a moment. You might have to roll me back if I eat too much, but I like the sound of this plan anyway. He laughs, letting her lead him along the pebbled path. So, how long are you staying? Glancing over her shoulder at him, because you know you can stay for as long as you like. I love having you here. I'm not sure. I'd like to be back for Tuesday at the latest, but we could always just go to the trials together and meet our respective packs when we get there. And Avery bites her lip. Thursday is 3 days away, and Sheff's not sure that she'll be able to let him go in 3 days. Yeah, that sounds good. We could totally go to the trials together. She answers quickly, nodding before Sonia sucks her in. God, we've become such softies. Sonia groans, cringing. I know. What the heck happened? Avery whines, and they both release a grumble together. The grumble escapes Avery's lips, and she claps her free hand over her mouth in embarrassment as she looks anywhere but Roman's direction. Sonia giving you a hard time? He laughs, looking down at her. His smile is so big that his eyes have crinkled up, and Avery has to stop herself from awing out loud too. Yeah, something like that. She breathes, a grin on her lips as she walks him through the trees. Why did you not cut down all of the trees here? He asks curiously, and she shrugs. I like them here. It doesn't make it any less safe it's in the middle of the pack. Plus, the kids love playing fairy gardens in the summer when we have late days. She laughs, remembering the last summer they had in her pack. Her smile drops a little as she realizes how much has happened in less than a year, and Roman notices the sudden lack of excitement in her face. What's wrong? Concern leaking into his voice. So much has happened, she mumbles, clearing her throat. This time last year, I was Deputy Alpha and in one of the worst depressions of my life. Now in Alpha, I have a mate, and I have a brilliant, supportive team behind me, including the sister I thought I'd never talk to again. She confesses, stopping in her tracks abruptly. What's wrong? He asks again, stopping with her and facing her. He can see the hesitant on her face, and he raises an eyebrow worriedly. I don't tell you how much I appreciate you, she murmurs, gazing up at him. I don't mind that. And she shakes her head. No, you deserve to know how great you are. I value you so much as a person, and I appreciate your loyalty and care much more than you'll ever know. She begins nervously. When something happens, you're the first person I want to tell. I can't seem to spend enough time with you. And even when I'm with you, I miss you, because I know you'll be going soon. Her confession is made in a small voice, and she looks over his shoulder at a tree to avoid his eyes. Before he can open his mouth, she continues. I love you, she blurts out, clapping a hand over her mouth. What the fuck did you just say? Sonia screams. It just came out. Avery roars back, panicking immediately. Take it back. Hit him on the head. Make him forget. Sonia screeches, her eyes as wide as possible. Shit, Avery mutters under her breath, staring at Roman, who looks ready to faint. His face is pale, his eyes are wide, and his mouth is open slightly. Close your mouth. You'll catch flies, she awkwardly comments, hurrying off down the path. Idiot, 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 she groans inwardly, and Sonia coughs. You're the one who said it, she reminds her. Don't tell me. I was there. Remember? Avery barks. Oh, my goddess. You've just ruined everything. Sonia whimpers, pacing around Avery's mind as she tries to release some of her nervous energy. No, we can't think negatively. Avery tries to convince both herself and her wolf as they walk faster and faster along the path to the restaurant. She was planning on surprising Roman with some cake. Do you want me to pull positivity out of my ass? There is no good side to this. Sonia hollers in distress, whimpering to herself as her mate hasn't come after them yet. Footsteps follow Avery, and she holds her breath in the hopes that it could be Ronan. Her hopes are dashed as a jogger runs by her, waving at her in acknowledgement as they run to the beat of their music. Avery's heart sinks as she realizes that he might not be coming after her anymore. As she continues to walk, a hand is put onto her shoulder, and she slowly turns around, the lack of scent giving away its owner immediately. I'm sorry for not coming sooner. I completely spaced out. Booker was really excited, so he took over for a few minutes. He apologizes softly, taking her hand. Ignore everything I said. It was stupid. She rushes out, shaking her head frantically as she continues to walk. When she gets nervous, she can't stay still. If he holds her in place, she might take flight to try to burn off some of the nervous energy. No, it wasn't. You expressed your feelings, which I know you find hard, he whispers, pulling her into a hug. Yeah, whatever. I had to express them to you eventually, she says uncomfortably, scratching her neck and wiggling out of the hug, continuing to walk at a fast pace. Where are you rushing to? He laughs, raising an eyebrow. I reserved a table. We have 10 minutes to get there, she responds shortly, still in a bottomless pit of self-hatred and distress. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I love you, too, he says with a roll of his eyes, and she scowls at him. You don't say it like that, she snaps, squirming her hand out of his. Her feelings are a little sensitive, and she feels hurt by his lack of response at first. She wanted what she said to be acknowledged, and she didn't want to be rolled at when he confessed his love to her for the first time. It felt fake and forced, He frowns but lets her walk a little in front of him. You rolled your eyes. Booker scorns. And Roman raises an eyebrow as he continues to walk. She thinks you said it just because she said it. Booker explains, outraged at his human stupidity. Why would she think that? Roman asks in confusion, because you didn't explain it. Or give her a speech or anything. You don't have to. But you definitely shouldn't have rolled your eyes. That was a dickhead move and even I know that. He comments. And Roman scowls at his wolf. Say you're sorry. And surprise her with something. Booker urges. And Roman sighs. He blocks out his wolf in order to focus on his surroundings, looking around in the trees to try spot her. He finally spots a figure about 20 meters in front of him, and he sighs quietly to himself. Ave, he calls, increasing his speed a little to catch up with her. Inspire. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I absolutely understand that I said that wrong, and I shouldn't have rolled my eyes. I really do mean what I said. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He confesses, grabbing her hand and staring into her eyes earnestly. She stares at him unsurely, biting her lip and looking around her at the trees. Nobody's around, and she has no distractions. She has to look at him. I appreciate your apology. She mumbles. I'd like to talk about this later. If that's okay. He instantly nods, lifting her chin to make her make eye contact with him. Everything you want to do is absolutely okay with me. He promises, offering his hand. She contemplates for a moment, and then slides her hand into his, bringing it to her lips and kissing his knuckles lightly. He always smiles slightly when she does that, and this time is no exception. A small grin creeps onto his lips, and his eyes crinkle a little. His dimples appearing and a hint of his scarily white teeth appear from behind his lips. Making him smile makes her happy, as much as she and Sonia both gag at how mushy that is. They exit the forest after a minute or two of walking in content silence, holding each other's hands, and gazing around at the sights that the forest has to offer. Once they order, Roman looks straight at Avery again, making some of the most intense eye contact Chess ever had to deal with. So why do you want me to mark you so badly? Roman asks her curiously, furrowing his brows as she bites her lip. I want everyone to know you're mine, and that I'm yours. She sighs, inwardly cringing. Is that all? And she shrugs. I'd also really like to be able to mind link with you. Sonia would love to be able to talk to Booker all the time because she really misses him when you're here and able to shift. She explains, and he lets a small smile creep onto his face. Some wolves aren't very in tune with their wolves and dismiss their opinions and needs because they're not human. Avery and Roman aren't of that category and instead work with their wolves in most of the things they do. A good relationship with your wolf is something Avery has made sure to emphasize in her pack's education, because you can't have harmony in life without harmony in your head. Booker is the same as Sonia. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He always misses her when we go back home. He laughs softly, taking her hand. I want to mark you. I really do. I really want to mark you. But I don't want to do it just because we have to. He whispers, and she scowls a little. You don't have to, but I'd really like you to. She admits, tucking some of her hair behind her ear. He gazes at her with a smile, watching as she shifts in her seat as she smiles and nods to some of her pack members. We need to remember that very few people know about us being mates. He adds after a minute of staring at her, and she winces at that fact. That's true. That isn't very good. She hums, nibbling on her lip. I have a feeling a fair few people will be a little upset that we didn't tell them. He groans, sitting back in his seat and sipping his iced tea. We can tell them we only found out. I'd rather lie to them and save their feelings. She admits, shaking her head. Who knows? I told Carolyn, Ryan, and Michelle. I think some of the kids guessed, but I didn't give anything away. He swears, nodding to himself as he ticks off everyone in his head. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nogan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Louisa. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nogan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Zephyr, and Hayden are on my side. I never had a chance to tell Kathleen, so I never did. Mitch swears he never mentioned that he wanted me to tell her. Avery lists, and Roman releases a low chuckle. I have no idea how nobody found out yet, he admits with a laugh, and Avery snorts. I know. We know the biggest loudmouths. Ain't actually disappointed in them. She chuckles, sipping her Sprite from her metal straw. The young waitress appears with their food, and the two of them thank her so much that the young girl turns bright red and practically runs from the table. She's one of my general's children, Avery notes. She studies at the university. She must be on vacation right now. She seems like a good kid. He nods, eyeing his sandwich. You don't have to wait for me to start eating. Avery sighs, rolling her eyes at Roman's strange habit. She finds it a little cute, because he always wants to make sure she's satisfied and happy before he gets comfortable. I like to make sure everything is okay with yours first. He grumbles, tucking into his sandwich after she begins. You could poison me like that, Avery notes. And Roman almost choked on his pulled pork sandwich. Why in the goddess' name would I want to poison you? You're my mate. He snorts, putting his sandwich down in order to take a long drink of his cold tea to try and wash down the crusty bread stuck in his throat. I mean, I've seen stranger things happen to mated couples. She shrugs, a grin tugging at the corners of her lips. She loves how he reacts to things he calls her a drama queen. Yet she doesn't start coughing or choking every time somebody says something. I am loving this food, but am so excited to go for a run after this. Booker has been irritating me all day because he's desperate to see Sonia again. He laughs, and Avery pouts. That's so cute. She misses him so much that she forced a shift when your message played on my answering phone. She giggles, shaking her head at her wolf's antics. I think a mind link would help them both settle down. He snorts, and she nods in agreement. We should get a temporary one put in by the witch I know. She suggests, and he grins. That's a brilliant idea. Text her now, he pleads, and Avery obliges, pulling out her phone after putting her sandwich down and typing on her device. She sends a simple message to the witch, knowing that the woman will text her back during the day. Her witch is strangely nocturnal, often conducting her rituals in moonlight or at midnight, the witching hour, as she called it the few times Avery met with her at that time. All of the others that she has heard of operate during the day, preferring to avoid the darkness. The couple scarf down their food, exchanging delighted looks as they sample the fries the waitress left on the table. As soon as the two finish their plates, the girl comes and collects them, promising to return with their dessert in a moment. What dessert? We didn't even order one. Roman exclaims in confusion, furrowing his brow. Ivory has to hide her smile at his pout, and she shrugs, acting innocent. The girl appears with 2 plates, which makes Avery raise her own eyebrows in confusion. She ordered Roman a toffee cake, because he mentioned that he liked sticky toffee pudding a few weeks previous. She had added that to her list of his known likes, and she had been really excited to surprise him with it. She had only ordered him one, wanting to get a cocktail for herself, so the second plate didn't make sense. The waitress lays the toffee cake in front of Roman, whose eyes bulge out of his skull. A fudge brownie is laid in front of Avery, and she gasps in excitement. The waitress grins at their reactions and leaves as quickly as she appeared. You got me cake, Roman exclaims with a smile, and Avery blushes. Yeah, I thought you might like it. You got me a brownie. She beams, picking up her spoon. Man, you're so great. Roman mutters before he tucks into his brownie with the excitement of a child and a chocolate bar. They return to eating in complete silence, but neither of them complains. It's almost therapeutic. Once they're done, Ivory jumps up from her seat, a smile on her face. Come on, it's time to run all of that off. She grins, waggling her hand for him to grab. He links his fingers with hers, furrowing his brows. Ove, we haven't paid the bill yet. He points out unsurely, and she winks at him. It's taken care of. You're my guest for the weekend. I'm going to treat you. She shrugs, and he tries to open his mouth to argue. She makes a range of noises to keep him quiet, and he decides just to scowl. You don't get to pay for everything. I have my own money, and a lot of it, she comments, shrugging her shoulders and leading him back into the forest. Ivory pulls the clothes bag out of her hoodie pocket, pulling off her hoodie and folding it up as small as she can. I think I need to get a bigger bag if I'm going to be wearing all of this bulky shit. She laughs, rolling her eyes. He places a hand on her cheek, drawing her in for a gentle and tender kiss. You don't realize how absolutely phenomenal you are. Turning around to let her strip, he always folds the clothes and packs them, because Sonia likes to have something strapped to her back while they run. Ivory says it's a fear Sonia has since she was only a pup, because she used to be convinced a vulture would pick her up and carry her off. Apparently, to Sonia, the bag makes her less of a target, so they do whatever the wolf wants. You're more amazing, Ivory quips, wrinkling her nose up at her response as she quickly shifts before he can argue with her. He turns around once he hears the final crack, and he cracks his neck, stripping out of his own clothes once he packs a various. He forces everything to fit into the bag, glancing at Sonia, who has her eyes closed and her head down to give him some privacy. Appreciating the show of respect from the wolf, he gently clips the bag to her, fastening it and making sure it's tight enough to stay on before he shifts. His process takes a little longer than usual due to Booker being in a bit of a food coma. Nevertheless, in 4 minutes, they've gone from fully clothed to in their wolf forms. Booker nudges Sonia, and she gives him a wolfy grin, taking off at top speed towards the lake house. He barks and follows, sniffing Mia cautiously as they run. He cares for Sonia and her human, and he doesn't think his own human is careful enough with them. Every time he gets control, he checks for every scent in the immediate area, and if he doesn't recognize it as one of a various pack members, he goes on high alert and gets ready to attack. Sonia skids to a halt, staring at Booker excitedly before she playfully pounces on him, baring her teeth as she tackles him to the ground. Booker howls, flipping them over and sniffing at Sonia's neck. Without warning, he sinks his teeth into the fleshy hollow of her neck, marking her as his. Immediately, Sonia does the same, not letting the usual exhaustion hit her before she gets a chance to mark him as hers. As soon as her teeth hit skin, Avery and Roman force their wolves back and take control, shifting into their human forms in horror. Avery claps a hand over her mark, her eyes wide and watery. Roman is paler than Avery has ever seen him as they stare at each other. Well, I guess there's no hiding it now, he says weakly, and she blinks. I suppose they made the decision for us, didn't they? She whispers, rubbing her throat. The mark went deeper on her than hers did on him, and she knows that she needs to rest her voice for a little while. What the fuck do we do now? He mutters, closing his eyes as he can feel a headache coming on. Mind links are flooding in, some from his own pack in concern for their alpha. Ryan felt pain through their link, and he immediately assumed the worst. Roman brushes him off, and he assumes Avery is doing the same as her eyes flash. Ivory is dealing with an influx of messages, some from Roman's pack trying to figure out who their new Luna is. They know. She breathes, and Roman clenches his jaw. This will be interesting, he whispers, leaning against a tree as she does the same.